Hey there folks, Rel here. In the background you'll see some Mass Effect 2 as well as some bits and pieces from other games as I share some thoughts on better gaming. Today I'd like to talk about the importance of immersion and the role a game's character can play in that. When you talk about immersion as a whole, we're usually talking about everything that makes a game what it is. Everything that gives you a sense of investment and involvement in a game, everything that connects you on an emotional and fundamental level. It can be elements like the story, the characters, the gameplay, the pacing, and even the community built within and around it. Some of the most memorable and immersive gaming experiences I've had were while playing a MUD back in middle school. And for those who don't know, MUD stands for Multi-User Dungeon, and they're entirely text-based. The MUD I spent the most time with was one called The Mage's Lair, and it's still active to this day if you want to go check it out at www.themageslair.net. But of course there's not nearly as many people playing it now. In The Mage's Lair, my first character was a vampire thief by the name of Kojiro. Vampires could levitate, they could walk through doors, they could drain health from enemies, and it also came at the cost of being extremely vulnerable to the sun and fire-based spells, among other things. You can build characters in thousands of different ways, and you can give them strengths and weaknesses, and also create a backstory about them and develop that character's personalities and flaws. And of course there was an element of role-playing involved. Grinding and farming was always there, but you didn't mind it because it wasn't a race to the max level. You weren't even really trying to be the most powerful or anything. At least I wasn't. And I was just trying to develop my character in a way that I wanted to, and there was a great community to help me through the game.
Figures. Screw this.
It was the same with Dungeons and Dragons. I used to play a halfling rogue using dual one-handed crossbows. It was not functional at all. It was actually a huge hindrance, but it was also entirely my own. The reason I bring this up specifically is because a lot of games lack that depth of character customization, especially in multiplayer games. You oftentimes lack the ability to make yourself strong in one area and extremely gimped in another. And this is most often for the sake of balance, but as a game focuses less on unique decisions and more on fat loot and how much damage you do, the experience is diluted a great deal.
I thought you were dead.
Your connection to your character is slowly but increasingly less relevant, less unique, and less you.
You let me know you were alive.
And to me that about sums up the differences between old school World of Warcraft and WoW today. And the more I think about it, the more I feel like it was the major reason that I actually quit in the first place. Single-player RPGs can more easily create character immersion than other games, but they can just as easily fall short. The Mass Effect series is a great example of immersion done right. My experience with Mass Effect started with Mass Effect 2, and I hadn't played the original. I can honestly say that this was one of the best and luckiest things to have happen to me in the world of video games. When you start a character in Mass Effect 2 without loading a save file from Mass Effect 1, you get the worst outcomes possible. You know, as if you went through Mass Effect 1 and you made just the worst terrible decisions. And I didn't know that, and truth be told, there were a lot of times where I was just completely confused, but I loved it. Even through that confusion, I was still able to understand the characters' relationships and enjoy their interactions. A good example is when I saw Garrus for the first time. I had no idea who Garrus was, but I wanted to. It was obvious that Shepard and Garrus had a long history, and it was one that I really wanted to explore.
Definitely like old times.
Same thing for when I ran into Caden Alenko on Horizon and he completely shut me down, or when I talked to Udina for the first time and thought that he was a complete and total mega-doucher. And I wanted so badly to go back and explore these interactions and how they continued from the first game into the second. And I have more than 300 hours logged on Mass Effect 2, thanks to that reason alone. When you have characters that are real, with their own motivations, their own flaws, and characters whose personalities are deep and multidimensional, they connect with you on a fundamental level. Proper characters, like those in Mass Effect, are key stops on the roadmap to an extremely immersive experience.
What was the special task group doing with the Krogan genophage?
On the other hand, this is why I also didn't enjoy Mass Effect 3 as much as I did Mass Effect 2. I spent hours building relationships with my crew in Mass Effect 2. And in Mass Effect 3, I didn't get to interact with more than half of those characters again, save for maybe a single mission or two if I'm lucky.
Krogan were left to repopulate.
It's the sort of betrayal that can really put a bad taste in your mouth. I know many people who hate, not just dislike, they hate Mass Effect 3 for that very same reason.
No other possibility.
Why get me emotionally involved with my characters in Mass Effect 2 just to severely dilute that experience in Mass Effect 3? Another example of character immersion that didn't really jive well with me was The Witcher. And don't get me wrong, The Witcher is a great game, it's a lot of fun, but I couldn't bring myself to finish it. I felt no attachment to Geralt, even though he's an awesome character. He's an outcast, he's an underdog, he's a ladies' man, and completely irrelevant to me as a player. Unlike Commander Shepard, you can't customize Geralt. You can have Geralt make decisions that have a sizable impact on the game, but they don't really impact Geralt himself. They don't help you evolve his character. Geralt is Geralt, and that's just who he is. So instead of being a co-pilot in the story, it's like you're a backseat driver.
A group of representatives from each ship.
I feel like people who play RPGs want to feel like they had an impact on the game, and if you're just making arbitrary decisions without a proper progression, without an evolution of the main character or the sub-characters, you're just spinning your wheels. You're advancing the plot, but you're not tapping into that deep emotional connection that's going to make a player care about it. A truly great game, to me, will make me forget where I am, what time it is, and how badly I need to eat or go to the bathroom. It needs to keep me invested in every single moment.
Piracy, theft of military craft, destruction of a space station, and vandalism.
So far I've talked about how a game's characters can help immersion, but what about the games that don't really have a strong emphasis on characters? Is it possible to create that same sense of immersion, and is it as important? In both cases, I'd probably say yes. Titanfall is an upcoming sci-fi shooter, which I'm not going to talk about too much here, but what do you notice?
Okay, your Titan's prepped for launch. Call it when ready. You got it. Stand by for Titanfall.
It's a touch of humanity, a recognizable character that stands for something, a character that connects us emotionally to the task at hand. And you could be thinking to yourself, but that's just something that happens, you do the thing, she does the thing, and who really cares? In Mass Effect 3 multiplayer, you play characters that mirror the lore in the game. You can essentially be part of N7, an elite group of Alliance soldiers, and the group that Commander Shepard was a part of throughout the campaign. How many people do you think decided to play the Quarian Marine so they could be more like Cal Rieger, or pulled a Krogan warlord and named it Rex, or picked a Quarian engineer as their first character because they romanced Tali? I'll answer that for you. A lot of people did. You may not feel the full impact of a well-designed character in a multiplayer game, at least not like you would in a single-player RPG, but it influences everything, whether you know it or not. Better yet, how many people cosplay as Master Chief from Halo, or just random soldiers from Battlefield 3? We naturally feel a connection to characters that we can relate to, and well-crafted characters can help immerse us in our game worlds by attaching us to the game on another level. In a multiplayer game, the immersion tends to get lost, buried by the gameplay, but it's always there in some form, ambient in the background. I have some thoughts about this specifically as it relates to PlanetSide 2, but that's not something I really want to get into in this video, so instead of going down that road, I want to end this episode with a question. Who are your favorite characters and from what game and why? Better yet, how did they help immerse you in the game's world? What made you feel an emotional connection to those characters and what emotions did you feel? If this video has been interesting, helpful, or entertaining, please feel free to like, subscribe, and tell your friends about the channel, and definitely drop a comment or a video response below telling me about your favorite characters. Thanks very much, folks. We're all signing off.
Whatever you say, boss man.